Imagine this, you're alone in a grand, creaking manor house, the kind where every shadow seems to whisper a secret. It's past midnight in St. Mary Mead, and a storm howls outside, rattling the windows of Gossington Hall. You're drawn to the library, its shelves heavy with ancient books, the air thick with the scent of old paper and wax. As lightning flashes, you see it, a figure slumped on the floor, a stranger in a glittering dress, her lifeless eyes staring into nothingness. Your heart races. The door behind you slams shut, though no one's there. Footsteps echo in the hall, faint but deliberate. Someone knows you've found the body, and now they're watching. Welcome to Miss Marple's Mystery of the Body in the Library, a tale where every clue pulls you deeper into a maze of deception. This isn't just a murder, it's a puzzle designed to haunt. If you're ready to unravel it, hit that subscribe button, grab a notebook, and let's dive into a mystery that'll keep you guessing until the end. The sun rises over St. Mary Mead, a village so quaint it feels like time forgot it. Nestled among tidy cottages and blooming gardens, Gossington Hall stands proud, home to Colonel Arthur Bantry and his wife, Dolly. They're a respectable couple, fond of routine bridge games, tea at 4, and evenings by the library fire. But this morning routine shatters. Mary, the young housemaid, begins her chores as usual, humming softly as she polishes the banister. She pushes open the library door, expecting nothing but dusty shelves and the faint glow of morning light. Instead, she freezes. There, sprawled across the Persian hearthrug, lies a woman young, glamorous, and undeniably dead. Her sequined dress sparkles like a cruel mockery of life, her blonde hair fanned out, her painted nails clutching at nothing. A faint bruise circles her neck, barely visible but chilling. Mary's scream rips through the house, waking the Bantrys and setting the stage for a mystery that will unravel their peaceful world. Colonel Bantry stumbles downstairs, his face pale as he takes in the scene. Who the devil is she? He mutters, his military bluster failing to mask his shock. Dolly, ever the sharper of the two, notices details the colonel misses: the woman's cheap perfume, the scuff on her high heel, the way the library window is unlatched despite last night's storm. This isn't just a body, it's an intrusion, a deliberate stain on their home. The police are summoned, but Dolly knows they'll need more than uniforms and notebooks to solve this. She sends for Miss Jane Marple, the village spinster whose gentle demeanor hides a mind sharper than a razor. Miss Marple arrives, her knitting bag in tow, her eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. She kneels by the body, noting the faint glitter of sequins caught under a chair, the smudge of lipstick on a glass hidden behind a book. This wasn't an accident, she says softly, her voice steady but grave. Someone wanted her found. Here. Why does this scene grip us? It's the violation of safety. A library is a sanctuary, a place for stories and solace, not death. Finding a stranger's body in such a personal space feels like a betrayal. Think of your own favorite room now. Imagine something so wrong invading it. That dissonance is what Agatha Christie masterfully exploits, hooking us with questions. Who is this woman? Why Gossington Hall? And why the library? The victim's glamorous appearance, her sequined dress, her polished nails clashes with the village's simplicity, hinting at a life far removed from St. Mary Mead. Was she running from something? Or was she brought here to send a message? Miss Marple's presence adds another layer. She's no detective in the traditional sense, yet her knack for human nature makes her the perfect guide through this fog of deceit. The village is already buzzing. Neighbors whisper over garden fences, speculating about the stranger. Was she a runaway, a starlet, a criminal? The police, led by the gruff Inspector Slack, cordon off the library, but their questions yield little. The Bantrys are shaken colonel. Bantry bristles at the scandal, while Dolly can't shake the feeling that the body's placement is a clue in itself. Miss Marple, meanwhile, sits quietly, her knitting needles clicking like a metronome. She's already noticing things. The way the rug is slightly askew. The faint scent of cigarette smoke that doesn't match the Bantry's habits. The single earring missing from the victim's ear. Each detail is a thread in a tapestry of lies, and Miss Marple is determined to weave them together. This opening sets the tone for a mystery that's as much about people as it is about clues. Every villager, from the gossiping postmistress to the nervous gardener, could hold a piece of the puzzle, and the suspense lies in the uncertainty. Nobody knows who the victim is, but everyone feels the weight of her presence. For example, consider how a single out-of-place detail in your own life, a strange phone call, an unfamiliar car parked nearby, can spark unease. That's the power of this setup. It's personal, invasive, and impossible to ignore. As we move forward, we'll dig into the victim's identity, uncovering secrets that tie her to St. Mary Mead in ways no one expects. By now, the police are dusting for fingerprints, the Bantrys are dodging reporters, and Miss Marple is quietly piecing together a theory. The library, once a haven, feels like a stage where someone has orchestrated a grim performance. If you're hooked on this mystery, drop a comment below. Who do you think the victim is? And why was she left in the library? Smash that like button and subscribe for more twists as we unravel this case. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the first clues about the victim's identity and why her glittering world crashed into the quiet of St. Mary Mead. Stay tuned for the secrets that lie ahead. The morning after the grim discovery, St. Mary Mead is no longer the sleepy haven it once was. Word of the body in Gossington Hall's library has spread like wildfire, and the village hums with unnervous energy. Neighbors linger at the post office, exchanging hushed theories about the dead woman in the sequin dress. Was she a film star hiding from scandal? A runaway caught in the wrong place? Or something far darker, a pawn in a game no one yet understands? At Gossington Hall, the police are still combing the library, their boots tracking mud across the polished floors. Inspector Slack, a man more comfortable with procedure than intuition, is growing frustrated. The victim has no identification, no purse, no papers, not even a monogrammed handkerchief. Her glamorous appearance feels like a taunt, a puzzle with missing pieces. But Miss Marple, sitting quietly in the Bantry's drawing room, is already turning over those pieces in her mind, her knitting needles moving steadily as her thoughts race. Let's dive into the victim's identity, or lack thereof. The police finally get a lead from the coroner's initial report. The woman is in her early 20s, with signs of a hard life beneath her polished exterior. Her nails, though manicured, are unevenly filed, and her dress, while flashy, is cheaply made, the sequins already peeling at the edges. A faint bruise on her neck suggests strangulation, but the coroner notes something odd: traces of makeup smeared on her face, as if applied after death. This detail sends a chill through Dolly Bantry, who's been hovering near the investigation, her curiosity outweighing her nerves. It's as if someone dressed her up. Dolly whispers to Miss Marple like a doll on display. Miss Marple nods, her eyes narrowing. Or a message, she murmurs, her voice barely audible over the clink of teacups. Miss Marple's strength lies in her ability to see the human side of every clue. She doesn't focus on fingerprints or alibis like Inspector Slack. Instead, she thinks about the woman's life. Why would someone go to the trouble of staging her body in a library? The unlatched window, the missing earring, the smudged lipstick all point to a deliberate act. Miss Marple recalls a village girl from years ago, a maid who ran off to London, chasing dreams of glamour only to return broken and ashamed. People don't change. She muses to Dolly. They just hide who they are. This victim, she suspects, came from a world of ambition and secrets. A world that collided with St. Mary Mead in the worst way possible. The police finally get a break when a local shopkeeper, Mrs. Price, comes forward. She swears she saw a woman, matching the victim's description at the train station 2 nights ago. Stepping off the late train from London, the woman was alone, clutching a cheap suitcase, her face half hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. She looked nervous, Mrs. Price tells the police, her voice trembling with the thrill of being involved. Kept looking over her shoulder like someone was following her. This sighting raises more questions. Why would a stranger come to St. Mary Mead, a place so small it barely registers on a map? And how did she end up in the Bantry's library? Dead, with no trace of her journey, let's pause to consider why this mystery feels so gripping. The victim's anonymity is a hook in itself. She's a blank slate, yet her presence disrupts everything. Think about a time you saw someone out. Place a stranger in your neighborhood, maybe, or an unfamiliar face at a family gathering. That sense of wrongness sticks with you, doesn't it? Agatha Christie uses that feeling to keep us on edge. The victim's glamorous appearance contrasts sharply with the villager's simplicity, making her both intriguing and alien. And the idea that someone staged her body, possibly applying makeup after death, adds a layer of menace. It's not just a murder, it's a performance, and someone in St. Mary Mead is the director. Miss Marple begins to piece together a theory, though she keeps it close for now. She visits the train station, chatting with the ticket clerk under the guise of buying a timetable. The clerk, a nervous young man named Tom, confirms Mrs. Price's story but adds a detail. The woman was asking about buses to Gossington Hall. Seemed like she knew where she was going, Tom says, scratching his head. But she was jumpy, kept checking her watch. Miss Marple files this away, her mind turning to the Bantry's connections. Could the victim have known them? Or was she drawn to their home? For another reason, the Colonel, flustered by the growing scandal, insists he's never seen her before. But Dolly isn't so sure. Arthur's hopeless with faces, she confides to Miss Marple, and he's been to London for those regimental dinners. Who knows who he might have met? The village, meanwhile, is spiraling into paranoia. The postmistress claims she heard a strange car late at night, its engine rumbling past her cottage. The gardener at Gossington Hall, a shy man named Henry, admits to seeing a light flicker in the library window during the storm. Thought it was just the lightning, he mumbles, avoiding eye contact. Every detail adds to the suspense, painting a picture of a village on edge where trust is eroding fast. Miss Marple, ever observant, notices how people's stories shift slightly with each telling, as if they're hiding something or protecting someone. She thinks back to a case in her youth, when a villager's lie about a stolen necklace unraveled a much darker crime. People always talk too much, she says to herself, a faint smile playing on her lips. This chapter leaves us with more questions than answers, and that's exactly what keeps us hooked. Who was this woman, and why was she heading to Gossington Hall? Did she come willingly, or was she lured? And what about that smudged makeup? That missing earring? Each clue feels like a breadcrumb leading deeper into the forest, and Miss Marple is our guide. Her quiet confidence reassuring yet mysterious. For example, imagine finding a stranger's belonging in your home, a single glove, a scribbled note. You'd wonder how it got there, wouldn't you? That's the unease driving this story, amplified by the growing sense that someone in St. Mary Mead knows more than they're letting on. As the police dig deeper, they find a scrap of paper in the victim's dress pocket, a torn ticket stub. From a London dance hall called the Silver Slipper, it's a small clue. but it's the first thread connecting the victim to a world beyond the village. Miss Marple's eyes light up at this, though she says nothing. She knows the silver slipper from village gossiper place, where dreams of fame meet dangerous promises. The stage is set for a deeper dive into the victim's past, and the secrets she carried to her grave. If you're as hooked as I am, drop a comment below with your theory. Who was this woman, and why was she in St. Mary Mead? Hit that like button and subscribe to keep up with this twisting tale. In the next chapter, we'll follow Miss Marple as she traces the victim's path. The discovery of the ticket stub from the silver slipper shifts the investigation, pulling the mystery beyond the cobblestone streets of St. Mary Mead and into the smoky, glittering underbelly of London. The dance hall's name alone conjures images of jazz bands, swirling dresses, and whispered deals in shadowed corners. Miss Marple, sitting in the Bantry's drawing room with a cup of tea, listens as Dolly reads the police report aloud. The stub is crumpled, its edges frayed, but the words "the silver slipper" admit one are unmistakable. Inspector Slack dismisses it as a trifle, but Miss Marple's mind is already racing. She's heard of the silver slipper before, not from personal visits, of course, but from the tales of young women in the village who dreamed of escaping to London's bright lights, only to find themselves tangled in its darker webs. A place like that, she says to Dolly, attracts all sorts, dreamers, schemers, and those who prey on both. Let's step into the silver slipper's world for a moment. Picture a crowded dance floor, couples swaying under dim chandeliers, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the clink of glasses. It's the kind of place where a girl like the victim, young, ambitious, perhaps a little desperate, might go to be seen. The police, spurred by the ticket stub, send a telegram to London, and soon a new piece of the puzzle emerges. The victim's name is Ruby Keene, a dancer at the Silver Slipper. She was no star, but she had a certain charm enough to catch the eye of wealthy patrons who frequented the club. Her co-workers describe her as a girl with big dreams but little luck, always chasing a break that never came. She talk about making it big. One dancer tells the police, her voice tinged with pity, but she got mixed up with the wrong sort. This revelation hit St. Mary Mead like a thunderbolt. Ruby Keene wasn't just a stranger, she was a performer, a girl who lived in a world of glamour and risk far removed from the village's quiet rhythms. But why was she here, in the Bantry's library, dressed like she was ready for a night on the town? Miss Marple, sipping her tea, considers the possibilities. Ruby's presence in St. Mary Mead suggests a connection, however tenuous, to someone in the village. Could she have been running from trouble in London? Or was she lured here, her death staged to send a message, the bruise on her neck, the post-mortem make-up, the missing earring, all point to a killer with a plan, someone who wanted Ruby's death to be noticed. Dolly Bantry, growing more invested by the hour, decides to dig deeper. She drags Miss Marple to the village telephone exchange where the operator, Miss Clara, is known for overhearing more than she should. Clara, flustered by the attention, admits to hearing a call 2 nights ago, a man's voice, low and urgent, asking for directions to Gossington Hall. It was late, Clara says, twisting her apron. I thought it odd, but I didn't listen long. Miss Marple's eyes gleam. A man's voice, a late-night call, and Ruby's arrival by train. Pieces of the puzzle are starting to align, but the picture is still maddeningly vague. She thinks of a similar case from years ago, when a whispered conversation in a village shop revealed a blackmail scheme. The smallest things, she muses, can hide the biggest truths. Back at Gossington Hall, the police uncover another clue, a single sequin, identical to those on Ruby's dress, caught in the hedge outside the library window. It suggests Ruby was brought in, or dragged through the window during the storm, explaining the unlatched frame. But why go to such trouble Inspector Slack, growing impatient, suspects a local vagrant. But Miss Marple shakes her head. A vagrant wouldn't care about lipstick or earrings. She says quietly, "This was personal." She begins to suspect. Ruby knew her killer, someone who followed her from London or someone already in St. Mary Mead, waiting for her arrival. The village, meanwhile, is a cauldron of rumours. The vicar's wife swears she saw a strange man near the train station, his hat pulled low. The milkman claims he heard a woman's laugh in the night, sharp and nervous, near Gossington Hall. Each story adds to the tension, making every villager a potential suspect. Even the Bantrys aren't above suspicion. Colonel Bantry's frequent trips to London raise eyebrows, and Dolly's insistence on involving Miss Marple feels almost too eager. Miss Marple, however, trusts her instincts. She's seen how ambition and desperation can twist people, and Ruby Keene's life at the Silver Slipper reeks of both. She recalls a young man in the village years ago who fell for a city girl and paid a heavy price. Love and greed, she thinks, are dangerous. Bedfellows, let's talk about why this chapter keeps us on edge. Ruby's identity as a dancer adds a layer of intrigue, painting her as a dreamer caught in a dangerous game. The Silver Slipper isn't just a backdrop, it's a symbol of the world she chased, a world that might have led to her death. Think about the last time you heard about someone chasing a dream that turned sour, a job that promised riches but delivered stress, or a relationship that glittered but broke your heart. Ruby's story taps into that universal fear. What happens when the pursuit of something better leads you straight to danger? The clues: the sequin in the hedge, the mysterious phone call. The staged body suggests a killer who's not just cunning but theatrical, someone who wants their crime to be seen and remembered. As Miss Marple pieces this together, she decides to take a bolder step. She asks Dolly to arrange a trip to London, to the Silver Slipper itself, if we want to know Ruby. She says we must see her world. Dolly, thrilled by the adventure, agrees, though Colonel Bantry grumbles about the expense. The police, meanwhile, are chasing their own leads, interviewing Ruby's co-workers and digging into her last known movements. They find a photo of Ruby at the club, smiling brightly, arm in arm with a man whose face is blurred in the dim light. Who is he? A lover? A predator? Or both? The answer lies somewhere in the smoky haze of the Silver Slipper, and Miss Marple is determined to find it. This chapter deepens the mystery, pulling us from the cozy village to the gritty edge of London's nightlife. Ruby Keene's life is coming into focus, but each clue raises new questions. Was she running from someone at the Silver Slipper? Did she come to St. Mary Mead seeking safety, only to find death? And who was the man in the blurred photo, lurking just out of sight? The suspense builds as we realize the killer might be closer than anyone thinks, perhaps even watching the investigation unfold. Drop a comment below with your guess. Who was Ruby running from? And why was her body left in the library? Hit that like button and subscribe to keep up with this twisting tale. In the next chapter, we'll follow Miss Marple to the Silver Slipper, where the glitter hides secrets darker than anyone expects. Stay tuned for what's next. The train to London rattles along, carrying Miss Marple and Dolly Bantry toward the glittering chaos of the Silver Slipper. The countryside fades, replaced by the grimy sprawl of the city, where streetlights flicker and the air hums with restless energy. Miss Marple sits by the window, her knitting untouched, her eyes scanning the horizon as if it holds answers. Dolly, fidgeting beside her, can't stop talking about the case. It's like something out of a novel, she says, her voice a mix of excitement and unease. A dancer, dead in our library. Who could have done it? Jane? Miss Marple smiles faintly, her mind already sifting through the fragments of Ruby Keene's life. She knows the Silver Slipper isn't just a dance hall, it's a crucible where dreams and danger collide, and she's prepared to step into its shadows to uncover the truth. Let's set the scene. The Silver Slipper is tucked down a narrow London alley, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the evening mist. Inside, the air is thick with perfume, sweat, and a wail of a saxophone. Couples twirl across the dance floor, their laughter edged with desperation. Waiters weave through the crowd, balancing trays of drinks, while sharp-eyed men in tailored suits watch from the corners. This is Ruby Keene's world, a place where a girl could be a star for a night or a victim by morning. Miss Marple, in her sensible coat and hat, looks out of place, but her keen eyes miss nothing. Dolly, on the other hand, is wide-eyed, caught between fascination and nerves. It's so alive. She whispers, clutching her handbag as they step inside. Their guide is Josie Turner, Ruby's friend and fellow dancer, who meets them at the bar. Josie is tall, with sharp cheekbones and a guarded smile, her sequin dress catching the light like Ruby's did. She's shaken by Ruby's death, but eager to talk, perhaps too eager. Ruby was sweet, Josie says, stirring her drink. But she was naive, thought she could charm her way to the top. Josie reveals that Ruby had been working at the Silver Slipper for 6 months, dancing for tips and hoping for a big break. She caught the attention of a few regulars, wealthy men, who showered her with gifts but expected favors in return. One man in particular stood out, a shadowy figure known only as Mr. G, who'd been seen with Ruby the night she left for St. Mary Mead. This name Mr. G sends a ripple through Miss Marple's thoughts. She's heard of men like him before, charming predators who thrive in places like the Silver Slipper, offering promises they never keep. Josie's story paints a picture of Ruby as a girl teetering on the edge, chasing fame but falling into dangerous hands. She was scared that last night, Josie admits, her voice dropping, said she had to get out of London, that someone was after her. But who, and why St. Mary Mead? Miss Marple presses Josie for details, but the dancer grows cagey, glancing at the crowd as if expecting someone to be listening. I've said too much, she mutters, slipping away into the throng. Let's talk about why this scene pulls us in. The Silver Slipper is a world apart from St. Mary Mead, yet it's connected by Ruby's death, the contrast between the villages. Quiet and the club's chaos mirrors the clash between Ruby's dreams and her grim fate. It's like stepping from a cozy coffee shop into a crowded nightclub. You feel the shift in energy, the undercurrent of risk. Agatha Christie uses this setting to deepen the mystery, showing us the world Ruby inhabited and the dangers she faced. Think about a time you stepped into an unfamiliar place, a party where you didn't know the rules, or a job where the stakes felt too high. That unease is what Ruby lived, and it's what led her to Gossington. Hold up, back at the club, Dolly, undeterred by Josie's evasiveness, strikes up a conversation with the bartender, a weary man named Eddie. He remembers Ruby vividly, her bright smile, her nervous energy. She was always looking over her shoulder, Eddie says, polishing a glass. Last week, she got a letter made her real jumpy. Burned it right after reading it. A letter? Miss Marple's ears perk up. This is new, a clue that suggests Ruby was hiding something or someone was threatening her. Eddie doesn't know more, but he points them to a corner table where Ruby often sat with Mr. G. The table is empty now, but Miss Marple notices a faint scratch on its surface, like initials carved in haste. Arcade Plus, the second initial, is illegible, but it's enough to make her heart skip. Was Ruby leaving a message, or was someone else marking their claim? The police, meanwhile, are following their own leads in London. They've tracked down Ruby's landlord, who says she paid her rent sporadically, often in cash handed to her by a fancy gent who visited late at night. The landlord's description of the man is vague: tall, well-dressed, always wearing a hat, but it matches Josie's mention of Mr. G. The police also find Ruby's tiny flat, now eerily empty, with signs of a hurried departure, clothes strewn. Across the floor, a half-packed bag, a broken mirror. It's as if Ruby fled in a panic, but to where? And why Gossington Hall? The photo from the club with Ruby and the blurred man is their best lead, but his identity remains elusive. Miss Marple, back at the Silver Slipper, takes a moment to observe the crowd. She sees young women like Ruby, their smiles bright but brittle, and men whose eyes linger too long. She thinks of a village scandal years ago, when a local boy was ruined by a city swindler who promised wealth but delivered debt. Motives, she muses, are always the same: love, money, or revenge. Ruby's death feels like a mix of all three, but the killer's theatrical touch, the makeup. The staged body suggests something more personal, almost obsessive. Was Mr. G her lover, her blackmailer, or something worse? And how does he connect to St. Mary Mead? Dolly, growing restless, suggests they stay for the evening show, hoping to spot Mr. G in the crowd. Miss Marple agrees, though her instincts tell her the answers lie not just in faces, but in the spaces between them, the secrets people don't say. As the band strikes up a new tune, a young dancer takes the stage, her moves echoing Ruby's. The crowd cheers, but Miss Marple notices a man in the shadows, his hat tipped low, slipping out a side door. She can't see his face, but his hurried exit feels like a warning. We're getting closer, she whispers to Dolly. Her voice steady but laced with urgency, this chapter ramps up the suspense, pulling us into Ruby's world and introducing Mr. G as a looming threat. The Silver Slipper is more than a setting, it's a mirror reflecting Ruby's hopes and fears, and a stage where her killer may have played a role. The clues: the burned letter, the carved initials, the mysterious man build a web of intrigue, each thread pulling us deeper. Think about a time you found a clue to a puzzle in your own life, a cryptic text, a forgotten note. That curiosity, that need to know, is what drives this story. Miss Marple's calm observation keeps us grounded, but the unanswered questions keep us on edge. As they leave the Silver Slipper, Miss Marple clutches a new clue, a matchbook from the club, found under Ruby's table with a phone number scrolled. Inside, it's a small thing, but in her hands it feels like a key. Back in St. Mary Mead, the police are about to uncover another piece of the puzzle. A witness who saw a car near Gossington Hall the night of the murder, its license plate partially obscured by mud. The net is tightening, but the killer is still a shadow slipping through the cracks. Drop a comment below with your theory. Who was Mr. G, and what was Ruby running from? Hit that like button and subscribe to keep up with this twisting tale. In the next chapter, we'll follow Miss Marple back to St. Mary Mead, where a new clue ties Ruby's death to someone closer to home than anyone expected. Stay tuned for the next. Back in St. Mary Mead, the train from London pulls into the station under a grey, heavy sky. As if the village itself is holding its breath, Miss Marple and Dolly step onto the platform, the matchbook with the scrawled phone number tucked safely in Miss Marple's purse. The village feels different now, less like a haven and more like a chessboard, where every move hides a strategy. The news of Ruby Keene's identity has spread, and a gossip has taken a sharper edge. Neighbors know. Longer just whisper about the body, their pointing fingers, casting suspicious glances at one another. The postmistress, Mrs. Waddle, swears she saw a man in a dark coat near Gossington Hall the night of the murder, though her story shifts with each telling. The milkman, now claiming he heard a muffled cry, not just a laugh, looks uneasy when questioned. Even the Bantry's gardener, Henry, seems to shrink under scrutiny, his eyes darting away whenever Ruby's name comes up. Let's dive into the heart of St. Mary Mead. where the clues are starting to point inward. Miss Marple, sitting in her neat cottage with a pot of tea, unfolds the matchbook and studies the phone number. It's a London exchange, but the digits are unfamiliar, not linked to the silver slipper or any known contact of Ruby's. She decides to trace it, enlisting Dolly's help to call from the village post office, where Mrs. Waddle's curiosity might yield more than just gossip. The call connects to a boarding house in London, but the landlady claims no one by Ruby's description ever stayed there. Plenty of girls come and go, she says curtly before hanging up. Miss Marple frowns, sensing a dead end or a deliberate misdirection. Someone knows more than they're saying. She tells Dolly, her voice calm but firm, and they're closer than we think. The police, back at Gossington Hall, have their own breakthrough. The witness who saw the car near the hauler, local farmer named Mr. Brooks, finally comes forward with a clearer memory. The car was a sleek black sedan, its license plate smeared with mud but starting with the letter L. It was parked near the estate's back gate, hidden by trees, just before the storm hit. This matches the postmistress's story of a strange vehicle rumbling through the village, and it raises a chilling question. Was Ruby brought to St. Mary Mead in that car, alive or already dead? Inspector Slack, still skeptical of Miss Marple's meddling, focuses on the car, sending officers to check local garages for any matching vehicles. But Miss Marple is more interested in the driver. A car doesn't kill, she muses, a person does. Let's talk about why this shift back to the village amps up the suspense. St. Mary Mead, with its cozy cottages and familiar faces, should feel safe. But Ruby's death has cracked that illusion. Every villager is now a potential suspect, their quirks and habits taking on new, sinister meanings. Think about a time you realized someone you trusted might be hiding something, a friend who dodged questions, a neighbor who acted oddly. That creeping doubt is what St. Mary Mead feels now, and Agatha Christie plays it masterfully. The car, the phone number, the shifting stories, they're not just clues but threads tying Ruby's glamorous world to this quiet village, suggesting the killer isn't some distant stranger but someone who walks these streets. Miss Marple decides to revisit Gossington Hall, her eyes sharp for overlooked details. She wanders the library, now eerily quiet without the police, and notices something new, a faint scuff mark on the windowsill. Not just dirt, but a smudge of polish, as if someone tried to clean it. It's a small thing, but to Miss Marple it screams intent, a killer covering their tracks. She recalls the sequin in the hedge, the unlatched window, and now this smudge. Someone was very careful, she murmurs to Dolly, who's pacing nervously, but not careful enough. Dolly, growing anxious, wonders if the killer is still nearby, watching the investigation unfold. The thought sends a shiver through her, and even Miss Marple's calm demeanor can't fully ease the tension. The village's unease deepens when a new rumor surfaces. Ruby Keene wasn't a complete stranger. The vicar's wife, Mrs. Clement, recalls a young woman visiting St. Mary Mead a month ago, staying at the Blue Boar Inn. She was blonde, flashy, and asked questions about the Bantry's estate. Could it have been Ruby? The innkeeper, Mr. Pork, confirms it, describing a woman who paid in cash and left after one night, her suitcase bulging. Seemed like she was looking for someone, he says, scratching his chin. Miss Marple's mind races. Ruby wasn't just passing through, she came to St. Mary Mead with a purpose, and that purpose led to her death. This new information shifts suspicion closer to home. Colonel Bantry, already rattled by the scandal, grows defensive when questioned about his London trips. I meet dozens of people, he snaps, his face red. Doesn't mean I knew her. But Dolly isn't so sure. She remembers a dinner party a few weeks ago, where the colonel mentioned a charming young lady he met at a regimental event in London. Could it have been Ruby, or is the connection elsewhere? Hidden in the village's own secrets, Miss Marple, ever observant, visits the Blue Boar Inn, chatting with Mr. Pork under the guise of ordering tea. He lets slip that the woman likely Ruby asked about a local man, someone important in the village. But who? The phone number from the matchbook nags at Miss Marple. She decides to dig deeper, asking Dolly to check with the village doctor, Dr. Haydock, who knows everyone's business. Dr. Haydock, a gruff but kind man, recalls treating a young woman last month for a sprained ankle. She was blonde, nervous, and mentioned a friend in St. Mary Mead who'd invited her to visit. Didn't give a name, he says, frowning, but she seemed scared, like she was running from something. This aligns with Josie's story. From the silver slipper Ruby was fleeing danger, but it followed her here. Let's pause to unpack why this chapter keeps us hooked. The mystery is no longer just about Ruby's death, but about how a glamorous dancer ended up in a sleepy village. Her life snuffed out in a staged spectacle. The clues, the scuff mark, the car. The invisit point to a killer who knows St. Mary Mead's rhythms. Someone who blends in yet harbors a deadly secret. It's like finding a hidden message in a familiar book. You thought you knew the story, but now it's twisting in ways you didn't expect. Miss Marple's quiet persistence, her knack for seeing through lies, keeps us anchored. But the growing list of suspects, Colonel Bantry, the mysterious important man, even Henry the gardener makes every shadow suspect dot as Miss Marple sips her tea at the inn. She notices a detail that chills her, a guest book entry from Ruby's visit, signed with a shaky hand. Next to her name is a smudged word, barely legible, that looks like danger. Was Ruby warning someone, or was it a cry for help? The police, meanwhile, traced the black sedan to a rental agency in London leased under a false name. The net is closing, but the killer's identity remains elusive, a phantom hiding in plain sight. Drop a comment below with your guess who in St. Mary Mead knew Ruby, and why did she come here? Hit that like button and subscribe to keep up with this twisting tale. In the next chapter, we'll uncover a shocking connection between Ruby and a villager, pulling the mystery closer to home than anyone imagined. Stay tuned for the next revelation. The air in St. Mary Mead grows thicker, as if the village itself is tightening its grip on its secrets. Miss Marple sits in the dim parlour of the Blue Boar Inn, her fingers tracing the smudged word. Danger in the guest book beside Ruby Keene's signature. The ink is faint, the letters shaky as though written in a moment of fear. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters and the village feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for the next revelation. Miss Marple's eyes, sharp despite her gentle demeanour, linger on the page. Ruby came to St. Mary Mead for a reason, and that reason is tied to someone here, someone who knew her, someone who might have wanted her silenced. The matchbook with the mysterious phone number sits in her purse, a nagging clue. But it's the guest book that pulls her focus now. She was trying to tell us something, Miss Marple murmurs to herself, her knitting needles still for once. The question is, who was Ruby warning? And what danger followed her to Gossington Hall? Let's dive into the heart of this chapter. The guest book entry is a turning point, a whisper from Ruby that echoes beyond her death. Miss Marple, with Dolly Bantry at her side, decides to dig deeper into Ruby's visit to the village a month ago. The innkeeper, Mr. Pork, is reluctant to talk further, his hands fidgeting as he wipes down the counter. But under Miss Marple's gentle probing, he admits Ruby wasn't alone that day. There was a man, he says, his voice low. Didn't catch his name, but he met her in the lounge. They talked for an hour, heads close together, like they didn't want to be overheard. Mr. Pork's description is vague, tall, well-dressed. A city type, but it matches the shadowy Mr. G from The Silver Slipper. Could he have followed Ruby here, or was he a local, Hiding in plain sight, the police, meanwhile, are chasing the lead on the black sedan. Inspector Slack, his patience wearing thin, gets a report from the London rental agency. The car was leased under the name George Smith, an obvious alias paid for in cash. The agency clerk remembers a man with a clipped voice and a scarf pulled high, obscuring his face. The car was returned the morning after Ruby's death. Its interior spotless except for a single blonde hair on the passenger seat. Forensic tests confirm it matches Ruby's, sending a jolt through the investigation. She was in that car, likely on her way to Gossington Hall. But was she alive when she arrived? The bruise on her neck, the staged makeup, the missing earring all suggest a killer who planned every detail. Someone who knew the Bantry's home well enough to slip in during a storm. Miss Marple's mind turns to the villagers. St. Mary Mead is small, its residents interconnected by gossip and history. Yet someone among them holds a deadly secret. She visits the village shop where Mrs. Price, the shopkeeper who saw Ruby at the train station, is now avoiding her gaze. "I might have been mistaken," Mrs. Price mutters, rearranging tins on a shelf. It was dark, could have been anyone. Her sudden backtracking raises Miss Marple's suspicions. People lie for a reason: fear, guilt, or loyalty, and Mrs. Price's nervous hands betray her. Miss Marple recalls a similar incident years ago when a villager's hesitation hid a theft. The truth, she thinks, is in what people don't say. Dolly, ever eager, suggests they question Henry, the Bantry's gardener, who's been acting oddly since the murder. Henry is weeding the rose beds when they find him, his cap pulled low, his hands trembling slightly. He repeats his story about the flickering light in the library window, but under Miss Marple's steady gaze, he adds a new detail. He saw a figure moving near the hedge that night, too quick to identify. Could have been a man, he mumbles, or maybe just the storm playing tricks. Miss Marple notes the sweat on his brow, the way his eyes dart to the house. Henry knows more than he's letting on. But is he protecting himself or someone else? The investigation takes a darker turn when the police uncover a new witness, Miss Emily Hart, an elderly spinster who lives near Gossington Hall. She claims she saw a man leaving the estate's back gate the night of the murder, carrying a small bundle. Looked like a scarf or a shawl, she says, her voice quavering. He was in a hurry, kept to the shadows. Her description matches the car's. Driver tall, well-dressed, hat low, but it also points to someone familiar with the estate's layout. The bundle intrigues Miss Marple. Could it be Ruby's missing earring? Or perhaps the letter she burned at the silver slipper? The pieces are starting to fit, but the puzzle is far from complete. Let's unpack why this chapter keeps us on edge. The guest book's danger feels like Ruby's voice reaching from the grave, a plea that deepens the mystery. The black sedan, the blonde hair, the shadowy figure, they all point to a killer who's not just cunning but meticulous. Someone who planned Ruby's death down to the last sequin. It's like finding a hidden note in your own home, written by a stranger. It unnerves you, makes you question what you thought you knew. Agatha Christie uses these clues to pull us deeper, making St. Mary Mead feel less like a village and more like a trap. The villagers' shifting stories, Mrs. Price's backtracking, Henry's nerves. Miss Hart's late confession suggest a conspiracy, or at least a collective fear of the truth. Miss Marple decides to follow the phone number from the matchbook, suspecting it's a thread that ties Ruby to St. Mary Mead. She enlists the village postmaster, Mr. Bates, to trace it further. He's reluctant, citing privacy. But Miss Marple's charm coaxes a lead. The number belongs to a private line in a nearby town, Dannemouth, where a wealthy businessman, Basil Blake, lives. Basil is a flamboyant figure known for throwing lavish parties and mingling with London's fast set. Could he be Mr. G? Or is he another piece of the puzzle, connected to Ruby through a shared secret? Miss Marple recalls hearing about Basille's visits to the Silver Slipper, mentioned in passing by Dolly during a bridge game. He's a wild one, Dolly had said, always with a new girl on his arm. The mention of Basil sends Dolly into a flurry of speculation. He's got that big house by the sea, she says, her eyes wide. And he was in St. Mary Mead last week, visiting his aunt. Miss Marple nods, her mind racing. Basille's presence in the village, his ties to London, and his reputation make him a person of interest. She decides to visit Dannemouth, but first she returns to Gossington Hall to re-examine the library. There, she finds another clue, a tiny piece of fabric caught in the window latch, matching the cheap sequined material of Ruby's dress. It confirms the killer entered through the window, but the fabric is frayed, suggesting a struggle. Was Ruby alive when she was brought here, fighting for her life? The village is now a web of suspicion. Even Colonel Bantry isn't above doubt his. London trips and vague memory of a charming young lady keep circling back. Dolly, loyal but anxious, begins to wonder if her husband's innocence is as certain as she thought. Miss Marple, however, focuses on Basil Blake. She knows men like him charming, reckless, and dangerous when cornered. She recalls a village boy years ago, ruined by a similar man who promised fame but delivered shame. The past, she thinks, always leaves clues for the present. This chapter tightens the screws, bringing the mystery back to St. Mary Mead's doorstep. The guest book, the sedan. The fabric, they're not just clues but signposts pointing to a killer who knows the village intimately. The introduction of Basil Blake adds a new suspect, his flashy lifestyle clashing with the village's quiet, yet fitting the profile of Ruby's world. Think about a time you realized a familiar face might hide a secret, a co-worker who's too smooth, a friend who's too quick to change the subject. That unease drives this story, amplified by the sense that the killer is watching. Waiting for someone to get to close quarters, Miss Marple prepares for her trip to Dannemouth. The police uncover another lead, a pawnbroker in London who received a single earring, matching Ruby's the day after her death. The man who pawned it was tall, his face hidden by a scarf. The net is tightening, but the killer remains a shadow one step ahead. Miss Marple, clutching the matchbook, knows the answer lies with Basil Blake or someone even closer to home. Drop a comment below with your theory. Is Basil Blake the mysterious Mr. G? Or is the killer hiding among the villagers? Hit that like button and subscribe to keep up with this twisting tale. In the next chapter, we'll follow Miss Marple to Dannemouth, where a confrontation with Basil Blake reveals the road to Dannemouth winds through rolling hills, the sea glinting in the distance under a sky heavy with clouds. Miss Marple sits in the back of a rattling taxi, her knitting bag at her side, her mind churning with the clues that have brought her here. The matchbook's phone number, the guest book's cryptic danger, and the name Basil Blake. A man whose flashy lifestyle seems to bridge the gap between Ruby Keene's glittering world and the quiet of St. Mary Mead. Dolly Bantry, beside her, fidgets with her gloves, her excitement tempered by a growing unease. Basille's a charmer, she says, her voice tight, but there's something off about him. Always has been. Miss Marple nods, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She's seen charm mask malice before, and she suspects Basille's role in Ruby's death is more than a coincidence. The taxi pulls up to his sprawling seaside villa, its windows catching the pale light like unblinking eyes. The air feels charged, as if the house itself knows secrets it's reluctant to share. Let's step into Dannemouth, a town just far enough from St. Mary Mead to feel like another world, yet close enough for its residents to mingle with the village's gossip. Basil Blake's villa is a stark contrast to the cosy cottages of St. Mary Mead modern, gaudy, with a sleek car parked out front that matches the description of the black sedan. Seen near Gossington Hall, Miss Marple and Dolly are greeted by Basil himself, a handsome man in his 30s with slick back hair and a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Mrs. Bantry, what a surprise! He says, his voice smooth as silk. And Miss Marple, is it? To what do I owe the pleasure? His charm is practiced, but Miss Marple catches the flicker of tension in his jaw, the way his hand lingers on the door frame. He knows why they're here. Inside, the villa is a shrine to excess plush carpets, modern art, a gramophone blaring jazz that echoes Ruby's world at the Silver Slipper. Basil offers them tea, but his hospitality feels like a performance. Dolly, never one for subtlety, blurts out, "We hear about Ruby Keene. Did you know her?" Basil's smile falters just for a moment before he recovers. "Ruby, the dancer. Heard about her, of course, tragic business. But I don't see what it's got to do with me." His denial is too quick, too polished. And Miss Marple's instincts flare. She notices a cigarette case on the table engraved with the initials BB, and a faint scratch beside it, like the one on Ruby's table at the Silver Slipper. Coincidence? Or a connection? Let's unpack why this moment feels so charged. Basil Blake is the kind of man who thrives on attention, yet his casual dismissal of Ruby's name feels rehearsed. It's like meeting someone who knows more than they're letting on think of a friend, who changes the subject too fast when a sensitive topic comes up. Agatha Christie builds suspense by placing Miss Marple in the lion's den, surrounded by Basil's charm but sensing the danger beneath it. The villa, with its opulence, mirrors the Silver Slipper's allure, suggesting Basil is a link between Ruby's London life and her death in St. Mary Mead. The cigarette case, the sedan, the phone number, their threads in a tightening web. And Miss Marple is tugging at them carefully. She decides to probe gently, asking about Basil's visits to St. Mary Mead. "Your aunt lives there, doesn't she?" she says, her voice mild. "You were in the village last week, I believe." Basil's eyes narrow, but he laughs it off. "Auntie's a dear, but St. Mary Mead's dull as dishwater. I only pop in to keep her happy." His flippancy doesn't fool Miss Marple. She recalls the guest book at the Blue Boar Inn, where Ruby met a man described as city-like. Basil fits the bill, and his frequent trips to London place him in Ruby's orbit. She mentions the Silver Slipper, watching his reaction. "A lively place," she says. "I hear it draws all sorts. Did you ever meet Ruby there?" Basil's hand tightens on his teacup, a barely perceptible flinch. Might have seen her dance. He says, shrugging, "Pretty girls are a dime. A dozen in those clubs." Dolly, growing impatient, presses harder. "What about that car of yours? A black sedan, wasn't it? Seen near our house the night Ruby died." Basil's smile vanishes, replaced by a cold stare. "Lots of cars look alike, Mrs. Bantry. You'd do well not to jump to conclusions." The room feels smaller now, the air heavier. Miss Marple, sensing the tension, shifts the conversation to lighter topics, but her eyes are busy. She notices a photograph on the mantel, a group of young people at a party. Ruby's face unmistakable among them, her arm linked with Basil's. The photo is recent, its edges crisp, and it contradicts his claim of barely knowing her. Why lie back? In St. Mary Mead, the police are piecing together their own clues. The pawned earring, matching Ruby's, leads to a dead end. The pawnbroker can't recall the man's face, only his scarf and hat. But a new discovery shakes things up. A groundskeeper at Gossington Hall, not Henry, but an older man named Tompkins, admits to finding a button near the hedge the morning after the murder. It's small, silver, with a monogrammed B. Inspector Slack, now eyeing Basil Blake, sends officers to Dannemouth, but Miss Marple is already there. sitting across from the man himself. She doesn't mention the button. She wants to see how Basil behaves under pressure. The visit takes a darker turn when Basil's housekeeper, a nervous woman named Mrs. Reed, interrupts with a tray of biscuits. Her hands shake as she sets it down, and Miss Marple catches her glancing at Basil with something like fear. After she leaves, Miss Marple asks about Ruby's last visit to St. Mary Mead. She stayed at the Blue Boar Inn. She says, her tone conversational. Met someone there. Perhaps you? Basil laughs, but it's forced. You've got quite the imagination. Miss Marple, I don't make a habit of meeting dancers in village inns. But his eyes dart to the photograph, and Miss Marple knows. She's struck a nerve. Let's talk about why this confrontation keeps us glued. Basil Blake is a classic Christie suspect, charming, evasive, with just enough cracks in his facade to make us doubt him. The photograph, the button, the sedan, they're not proof, but they're damning, piling up like shadows around him. It's like suspecting a colleague of gossiping behind your back. You see the signs, but you need that one piece to be sure. Miss Marple's calm, probing questions are her weapon, cutting through Basil's charm to expose his unease. The housekeeper's fear adds another layer, suggesting Basil's influence extends beyond charm to control. Is he Mr. G, the man who haunted Ruby's final days, or is he a pawn in a larger game? Miss Marple and Dolly leave the villa, but not before Miss Marple slips the matchbook's phone number into the conversation. Watching Basil's reaction. A curious number was found in Ruby's things, she says lightly. Ever call London from here? Basil's face hardens, and for a moment the mask slips. I make a lot of calls, he says curtly, ushering them out as the taxi pulls away. Miss Marple notices a curtain twitch in an upstairs window. Mrs. Reed, watching them go. She knows something, Miss Marple whispers to Dolly, and she's afraid. Back in St. Mary Mead, the village is buzzing with new gossip. The button's discovery has reached the grapevine, and fingers are pointing at Basil. But Miss Marple isn't convinced he's the whole story. She thinks of the guest book's danger, the smudged makeup, the staged body. Basil may be involved, but the killer's theatrical flair suggests a deeper motive, one rooted in passion or revenge. She recalls a village scandal years ago when a jilted lover left a cruel note that sparked a feud. People kill for what they can't have. She muses, or for what they've lost. The police, meanwhile, are closing in on the sedan. A mechanic in Dannemouth reports servicing a black car with a scratched fender. The day after Ruby's death, the driver paid in cash and avoided eye contact. Inspector Slack is ready to hold Basil in for questioning, but Miss Marple urges caution. He's part of it, she tells Dolly, but not all of it. We need to know why Ruby came to him. A new clue emerges, a letter found in the Bantry's garden, half-burned and barely legible. It mentions a promise and a debt, signed with a single initial, G. Is it from Basil? Or someone else entirely? This chapter cranks up the tension. Placing Miss Marple, the late afternoon sun casts long shadows across St. Mary Mead. As Miss Marple makes her way to the modest cottage of Mrs. Eleanor Blake, Basil's aunt. The village is quieter now, but the silence feels heavy, like the calm before a storm. Miss Marple's steps are measured, her knitting bag swinging lightly at her side. But her mind is a whirl of connections. The half-burned letter with its cryptic debt, the monogrammed button, and Basil Blake's evasive charm in Dannemouth. The word danger from Ruby Keene's guest book entry lingers like a warning. And Miss Marple senses the truth is close hidden in the village's own history. Dolly Bantry trails behind, her enthusiasm for sleuthing tempered by a growing fear that the killer is someone they know. Eleanor's a sweet old thing, Dolly says, her voice uncertain, but she dotes on Basil. If he's mixed up in this, she'll be heartbroken. Miss Marple's lips tighten. or she'll know. Why? She replies softly, her eyes sharp as they approach the cottage door. Let's step into Mrs. Blake's world. Her cottage is a picture of village charm roses climbing the walls. A kettle whistling on the stove, but the air inside feels stifled, as if secrets have been locked away too long. Mrs. Blake, a frail woman with silver hair and trembling hands, welcomes them with a nervous smile. Her parlour is cluttered with family photos, many featuring a younger Basil, his grin as disarming then as it is now. Miss Marple settles into a worn armchair, her knitting needles clicking softly, a rhythm that seems to steady the room. She begins, with small talk, asking about the weather, the garden. But her questions soon turn to Basil's recent visits. He's been in St. Mary Mead often, hasn't he? She says, her tone gentle but probing. Mrs. Blake's smile falters her hands, twisting a handkerchief. Oh, Basil's a busy boy, she says, always coming and going. The conversation shifts to Ruby Keene, and Mrs. Blake's unease grows palpable. Dolly, impatient as ever, mentions the photograph from Basil's Villa Ruby on his arm, smiling at a party. Did he ever talk about her? Dolly asks, leaning forward. Mrs. Blake's eyes dart to a photo on the mantel, then away. He meets so many girls, she says, her voice thin. Actresses, dancers. I don't keep track. But Miss Marple catches the lie in her trembling fingers, the way her gaze avoids theirs. She recalls a village widow years ago whose silence protected a guilty son. Family loyalty, Miss Marple thinks, can hide the darkest truths. She presses gently, mentioning the button found near Gossington Hall, the black sedan, the phone number linked to Dannemouth. Each word lands like a pebble in a still pond, rippling through Mrs. Blake's composure. Let's talk about why this moment feels so electric. Mrs. Blake's cottage should be a haven, but it's a pressure cooker of unspoken truths. Agatha Christie masterfully uses the contrast between the cozy setting and the mounting tension to keep us hooked. It's like visiting a relative you love, but suspect is hiding something every pause. Every glance feels loaded. Mrs. Blake's devotion to Basil makes her a gatekeeper to his secrets, but her nervousness suggests she knows more than she wants to admit. The clues, the letter, the button, the sedan point to Basil. But Miss Marple senses a deeper layer, a motive rooted in the village's past. Is Mrs. Blake protecting her nephew, or is she guarding a secret of her own? Mrs. Blake finally cracks under Miss Marple's steady gaze. Basil's not a bad boy, she says, her voice breaking, but he's always been reckless. Got into trouble in London last year, debts, you know, to the wrong people. She hesitates, then confesses Basil came to her a month ago, frantic, asking for money to settle a problem. He mentioned a girl, someone who knew too much and was causing trouble. Mrs. Blake gave him what she could, thinking it was a gambling debt, but now she's not so sure. He was here. The night the poor girl died, she whispers, tears welling. Left late. Said he was driving back to Dannemouth. I didn't ask questions. Her confession hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Was Ruby the problem Basil needed to settle? Miss Marple's mind races, piecing together the threads. The half-burned letter mentioned a debt and a promise, signed with a G. Basil's initials, BB, don't match, but George Smith, the alias used to rent the sedan, does. Could Basil be Mr. G, hiding behind a false name? Or is someone else using the alias to frame him? She thinks of the pawnbrokers, earring, the smudged makeup, the staged body in the library. The killer's flair suggests a personal stake, not just a transaction. Debts, she muses, aren't always about money. She recalls a village scandal decades ago, where a young man killed to silence a secret lover. Basil's charm, his debts, his connection to Ruby, they fit, but not perfectly. Dolly, stunned by Mrs. Blake's words. presses for more. Did Basil know Ruby was coming to St. Mary Mead? Mrs. Blake shakes her head, but her eyes betray doubt. He didn't. Say, she murmurs, but he was different that week jumpy, always on the phone. Miss Marple notes a detail Mrs. Blake let slip. Basil received a call the night of the murder, from a woman's voice, low and urgent. I thought it was one of his friends. Mrs. Blake says, blushing. Miss Marple's thoughts turn to Josie Turner, Ruby's friend from the Silver Slipper, who was cagey in London. Could Josie be involved, perhaps luring Ruby to St. Mary Mead for Basil or someone else? The police. Meanwhile, are closing in. Inspector Slack arrives at Mrs. Blake's cottage just as Miss Marple and Dolly are leaving. His face grim. He's got a new lead. A witness in Dannemouth saw Basil's car near the train station the night Ruby arrived. Parked for hours. The monogram button, the sedan, the photograph all point to Basil. But Slack is frustrated by the lack of hard evidence. He's slippery, Slack grumbles. But we'll get him. Miss Marple, however, isn't so sure Basil is the mastermind. The killer's theatrical touch, the lipstick, the sequin dress feels too deliberate, too cruel for a man like Basil, who seems more reckless than calculated. Back at her cottage, Miss Marple sifts through the clues. The letter's debt could point to blackmail Ruby knowing something about Basil, or someone close to him that threatened their world. She recalls the smudge of polish on the library windowsill, the sequin in the hedge, the missing earring. Each detail screams intent, a killer who wanted Ruby's death to be a spectacle. She thinks of the village's own secrets, Colonel Bantry's London trips, Henry the gardener's nervous glances, even Mrs. Price's sudden memory lapses. Someone in St. Mary Mead is hiding the truth, and Mrs. Blake's confession has brought them closer to it. Let's unpack why this chapter keeps us on the edge of our seats. Mrs. Blake's confession cracks open the mystery, pointing to Basil's debts and his late-night movements, but it also muddies the waters. Is he the killer or a pawn in a larger scheme? The woman's voice on the phone introduces a new player, Josie, perhaps, or another figure from Ruby's past. It's like finding a hidden message in a friend's diary. You're closer to the truth, but the words don't quite add up. Christie's genius lies in making every clue a double-edged sword, pointing to guilt but also doubt. Miss Marple's calm, relentless probing keeps us anchored, but the growing web of suspects makes every villager a potential threat. As Miss Marple sips her tea, a new clue surfaces. A delivery boy, young Tommy, comes forward, claiming he saw a woman. The twilight settles over St. Mary Mead, casting a soft glow on the village's cottages. But the warmth of the evening does little to ease the chill of suspicion gripping its residents. Miss Marple sits in her cozy parlour, the guest book from the Blue Boar in open before her. The word danger beside Ruby Keene's signature staring back like a silent accusation. The delivery boy's sighting of a tall woman in a dark coat near Gossington Hall. The night of the murder gnaws at her, a piece of the puzzle that doesn't yet fit. Her thoughts keep circling back to Mary, the Bantry's young housemaid who found Ruby's body, her red-rimmed eyes and quiet demeanour hinting at more than just shock. Miss Marple's knitting lies untouched, her fingers steepled as she considers the threads connecting Ruby to St. Mary Mead, the half-burned letter, the monogrammed button, Basil Blake's evasions, and now this mysterious woman. The truth, she murmurs to herself, is often in the quiet ones. She resolves to speak with Mary, sensing the maid holds a key to unlocking the mystery. Let's step into Gossington Hall, where the grandeur of the Bantry's home feels tarnished by Ruby's death. The library, once a haven of books and firelight, remains sealed off, its air heavy with the memory of that glittering corpse. Miss Marple finds Mary in the kitchen, polishing silver with mechanical precision. Her movements slow, almost trance-like. Dolly Bantry hovers nearby, her usual chatter, subdued as if she senses the weight of the moment. "Mary, dear," Miss Marple begins, her voice gentle as a breeze, "you've been through quite a shock. Finding the poor girl. It must weigh on you." Mary's hands falter, a spoon clattering softly against the table. Her eyes widened. Haunted, meet Miss Marple's for a fleeting moment before darting away. "I don't know anything, ma'am," she whispers, but her voice trembles, betraying her. Miss Marple's strength lies in her patience, her ability to see the human beneath the facade. She sits across from Mary, her gaze kind but unrelenting, like a grandmother who knows you've hidden the truth. "You saw something that night, didn't you?" she says softly. "Before you found her, something that's been troubling you." Mary's lips part, but no words come. Her fingers clutch the polishing cloth, knuckles white. Dolly, unable to stay silent, leans in. "Mary, if you know something, you must tell us, for Ruby's sake." The mention of Ruby's name breaks something in Mary. Tears spill down her cheeks, and she buries her face in her hands. "I didn't mean to keep quiet," she sobs. "I was scared." Let's unpack Mary's confession, because it's a turning point that sends shivers down the spine. Mary reveals she was awake the night of the murder. Unable to sleep, pacing the servants' quarters, she heard a noise soft, like a window creaking coming from the library. Curious, she crept downstairs, peering through the crack of the door. In the dim light, she saw a figure moving, not one but two, a man, tall and shadowed, and a woman in a dark coat, her face obscured. They were whispering, their voices sharp with urgency. Mary couldn't hear the words, but she saw the woman hand something to the man, a small object, glinting faintly like jewelry. Then the storm's thunder drowned out their voices, and Mary fled back to her room, terrified of being caught. "I thought it was a burglary," she says, her voice breaking. "But when I found her, that girl, I knew it was worse." This revelation hits like a thunderclap. The woman in the dark coat matches Tommy's sighting, and the man could be Basil Blake or the elusive Mr. G. The glinting object might be Ruby's missing earring or something else entirely, tying the scene to the pawnbroker's lead. Miss Marple's mind races, piecing together the clues. The sequin in the hedge, the smudged polish on the windowsill, the staged body. The presence of two figures suggests a conspiracy. Not a lone killer, and Mary's fear hints at a threat, still lingering in St. Mary Mead. It's like discovering a secret meeting in your own backyard. You thought you knew your world, but now it's crawling with shadows. Agatha Christie uses Mary's confession to tighten the screws, making us question everyone, from Basil to the villagers who've been too quick to look away. Miss Marple presses Mary gently, asking about the woman's appearance. "She was tall," Mary says, wiping her eyes, "moved quick, like she didn't want to be seen. Her coat had a hood, but I think her hair was dark." This detail sends a jolt through Miss Marple. Josie Turner, Ruby's friend from the Silver Slipper, is tall with dark hair, and her cagey behavior in London now feels more sinister. Could Josie have followed Ruby to St. Mary Mead, part of a plot to silence her? Or is the woman someone closer? Perhaps even Mrs. Price, the shopkeeper whose story keeps shifting. Miss Marple recalls a village scandal years ago where a maid's silence hid a lover's betrayal. Fear, she thinks, makes people complicit. Dolly, shaken by Mary's story, suggests they tell Inspector Slack, but Miss Marple hesitates. "We need more," she says, her voice steady. Mary's seen a piece of the puzzle, but we don't yet know the shape. She asks Mary if she recognized the man, but the maid shakes her head. "It was too dark," she says, "but he moved, like he knew the house." This chills Dolly. Who realizes the killer or killers might be intimately familiar with Gossington Hall? The thought that someone close, perhaps even a friend, could be involved makes her hands tremble. Miss Marple, however, remains calm, her mind sifting through suspects. Basil Blake, with his debts and lies, Colonel Bantry, whose London trips raise questions, even Henry, the gardener, whose nervous glances hint at guilt. The police, meanwhile, are closing in on another clue. The half-burned letter found in the Bantry's garden has been analyzed, revealing a few more words: meet me, trust, danger. It's not much, but it suggests Ruby was lured to St. Mary Mead, perhaps by someone she thought she could trust. The initial G at the bottom points to Basil or George Smith. The sedan's renter, but Miss Marple suspects a misdirection. She thinks of the phone call Mrs. Blake overheard. A woman's voice reaching Basil the night of the murder. Was it Josie or someone else pulling the strings? The police also find a trace of ash near the library window, matching the letter's charred edges, suggesting it was burned on site, perhaps to destroy evidence. Let's talk about why this chapter keeps us glued. Mary's confession is a bombshell, revealing not one but two figures in the library, turning a solitary crime into a possible conspiracy. It's like overhearing a whispered argument in a quiet house. You know something's wrong, but the details are maddeningly out of reach. The clues: the glinting object, the dark-coated woman, the burned letter build a sense of dread, suggesting the killer is part of a larger plan, one that's been woven into the fabric of St. Mary Mead. Miss Marple's quiet probing, her ability to coax truth from fear, keeps us anchored. But the growing list of suspects makes every face suspicious. Is Josie the woman in the coat, or is it someone closer, hiding among the villagers? Miss Marple decides to revisit the Blue Boar Inn, hoping to uncover more about Ruby's visit a month ago. The innkeeper, Mr. Pork, is cagey but under her gentle. Questioning, he admits Ruby asked about a Mr. Bantry during her stay, specifically whether he was in St. Mary Mead that week. This stuns Dolly, who insists Arthur had no connection to Ruby. He's forgetful, not deceitful, she says, but her voice wavers. Miss Marple, however, files this away, wondering if Ruby. The dawn breaks over St. Mary Mead with a pale, uneasy light, as if the village itself is bracing for the truth to surface. Miss Marple, undeterred by the fleeting glimpse of the hooded woman, sets her sights on Dalamuth once more, this time to the rundown boarding house linked to the matchbook's phone number. Her knitting bag swings lightly as she boards the early bus, her mind weaving together the clues: Mary's sighting of two figures in the library, the half-burned letter's cryptic debt and danger, and Ruby Keene's inquiry about Colonel Bantry at the Blue Boar Inn. The mysterious woman in the dark coat lingers in her thoughts, a shadow that could be Josie Turner or someone closer to home. Dolly Bantry, though eager to join, stays behind at Miss Marple's insistence. This requires a quiet step, Miss Marple says, her voice gentle but firm. The truth hides in the cracks, and I mustn't startle it. Let's step into the boarding house, a crumbling relic on Dalamuth's outskirts, its paint peeling like old skin. The air smells of damp wood and stale cigarettes, a far cry from the glamour of the Silver Slipper or even Basil Blake's lavish villa. The landlady, Mrs. Norris, is a weary woman with sharp eyes and a guarded demeanour, her apron stained with years of neglect. She eyes Miss Marple warily as the old lady introduces herself as a friend of a friend, inquiring about a recent guest, a tall gentleman who paid for discretion. Mrs. Norris's lips tighten, but the promise of a small tip loosens them. He was here, she admits, glancing at the door, called himself George, kept to himself, but had a visitor, a woman, dark-haired, in a hurry. Miss Marple's pulse quickens. The description matches Josie Turner and Georgia lines, with the sedan's alias, George Smith, But is this Mr. G or another piece of the puzzle? The landlady leads Miss Marple to the room George rented, a cramped space with a sagging bed and a single window overlooking an alley. The room feels like a hideout, a place for secrets to fester. Miss Marple's sharp eyes catch details. The police might miss a cigarette bit in the ashtray, its brand matching the faint smoke she smelled in Gossington Hall's library. A torn scrap of paper under the bed, its handwriting a close match to the burned letters G, and a faint smudge of lipstick on a cracked mirror, the same shade as Ruby's. He wasn't alone often, Mrs. Norris says, her voice low. That woman came late, always in a coat, hood up. They argued sharp words about money and promises. Miss Marple nods, her mind racing. The argument could tie to the debt in Ruby's letter. But was the woman Josie or someone else manipulating the scene? Let's unpack why this scene crackles with tension. The boarding house is a stark contrast to St. Mary Mead's cozy charm, yet it's a crucial link. A place where Ruby's glittering world and the village's shadows collide. It's like stepping into a stranger's attic, finding traces of your own life among their things and settling, disorienting. Agatha Christie uses this setting to heighten the stakes, placing Miss Marple in a gritty, dangerous space where every detail screams conspiracy. The cigarette, the lipstick, the scrap of paper, they're not just clues but echoes of Ruby's final hours, suggesting she was here or close before her death. The woman in the coat, arguing with George, adds a new layer of intrigue. Was she luring Ruby to her doom? Or was she another victim of the same scheme? Miss Marple presses Mrs. Norris for more, asking about George's appearance. The landlady shrugs. Tall, always wore a hat, kept his face low. Paid cash, left quick. It matches Basil Blake's description, but also the pawnbroker's. Mystery man and the figure Mary saw in the library. Miss Marple's thoughts turn to the glinting object Mary witnessed a duel, perhaps, or a key to Ruby's fate. She recalls a village scandal years ago, where a stolen brooch led to a betrayal that tore a family apart. Secrets, she thinks, are currency, and Ruby had too many. The landlady mentions one more detail. George left behind her. Small box, locked, hidden under a floorboard. She hasn't touched it, fearing trouble. Miss Marple, her voice calm but insistent, convinces Mrs. Norris to retrieve it. The box is small, wooden. Its lock scratched as if someone tried to force it. Inside, Miss Marple finds a single item, a locket, cheap but ornate, with a tiny photo of Ruby inside, her smile bright but strained. On the back, etched faintly, are the initials of K plus JT, Ruby Keene, and Josie Turner. This discovery hits like a lightning bolt. Josie wasn't just Ruby's friend. Their connection was deeper, perhaps romantic, perhaps dangerous. Was Josie the woman in the coat, arguing with George to protect Ruby or to betray her? The locket ties Josie to the boarding house, and possibly to the murder, but the initials don't explain G. Miss Marple tucks the locket into her purse, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Back in St. Mary Mead, the police are unraveling their own threads. Inspector Slack, frustrated but determined, finds a witness who saw a woman matching Josie's description at the Dannemouth train station the night Ruby arrived, buying a ticket to St. Mary Mead. The ticket clerk recalls her hood was up, her voice sharp, as if angry. This aligns with Mary's sighting of the woman in the dark coat, and it pulls Josie deeper into the web. Slack, now convinced Basil is George, plans to arrest him, but Miss Marple urges caution when Dolly relays the news. Basil is part of it, she says, but the woman is the key. She was there in the library, and she knows why Ruby died. Let's talk about why this chapter keeps us on edge. The boarding house is a crucible of secrets, its grim atmosphere amplifying the sense that the killer is close, watching. The locket, with its intimate connection to Ruby and Josie, adds a personal stake to the mystery, hinting at love, betrayal, or both. It's like finding a hidden photo in a friend's wallet. You thought you knew them, but now you're not. Sure, Christie's genius lies in layering clues that point to multiple suspects: Basil, Josie, even Colonel Bantry, while keeping the truth just out of reach. Miss Marple's quiet determination, her ability to see through the fog of lies, keeps us grounded. But the growing danger embodied by the hooded woman makes every step feel like a risk. Miss Marple returns to St. Mary Mead, the locket heavy. In her purse, she decides to confront Josie, who's been spotted back in London at the Silver Slipper. But before she can arrange the trip, a new clue surfaces. Henry, the Bantry's gardener, comes forward, his face pale. He admits to finding a scarf near the library hedge the night of the murder, dark and silky, with a faint scent of perfume. He hid it, fearing he'd be blamed, but now hands it to Miss Marple. The perfume matches the cheap scent on Ruby's dress, and the scarf's hem is torn, as if caught on something like the hedge outside Gossington Hall. Miss Marple's eyes narrow. The scarf could belong to the woman in the coat, tying her to the crime scene. This chapter puts the morning mist clings to St. Mary Mead, wrapping the village in a shroud as Miss Marple sits in the Bantry's drawing room, her knitting needles still, her eyes sharp with purpose. The clues have woven a tight net, the locket linking Ruby Keene to Josie Turner, the scarf with its cheap perfume, the half-burned letters Det and G, the monogrammed button, and Colonel Bantry's affair with Ruby, the shadowy Mr. G, possibly Gerald. The missing manager from the Silver Slipper looms as a final piece. But Miss Marple senses the truth lies closer in the heart of Gossington Hall. She's asked Colonel and Dolly Bantry to join her, along with Inspector Slack, who's itching to arrest anyone to close the case. The air is thick with anticipation, as if the walls themselves know the killer's name. Let's set the scene. The drawing room is warm, its fire crackling, but the warmth can't dispel the chill of betrayal. Colonel Bantry sits rigid, his face flushed, while Dolly fidgets, her eyes darting between her husband and Miss Marple. Slack paces, clutching a report on Gerald, whose fingerprints were found on the rented sedan. But Miss Marple's focus is on the scarf, now spread on the table, its torn hem a silent witness. She begins, her voice soft but commanding. Ruby Keene died because she knew too much, she says, and because someone needed her silenced, not just for what she knew, but for what she represented. All eyes are on her, the room holding its breath. Miss Marple unravels the mystery with surgical precision. Ruby, a dreamer caught in the Silver Slipper's allure, fell for Colonel Bantry's promises during a London fling. He was charmed, reckless, but when Ruby pressed for more money, a future, he panicked, fearing scandal. The half-burned letter was Ruby's, demanding he honor his promise or face exposure. But Bantry wasn't the killer. Miss Marple's gaze shifts to Dolly, whose hands tremble. You knew, didn't you, Dolly? She says gently. You found the letter in Arthur's study, saw Ruby's name, her threat to ruin your life. Dolly's face crumples, but she doesn't deny it. The room goes still. Dolly confesses, her voice breaking. She followed Ruby to St. Mary Mead after finding the letter, confronting her at the Blue Boar a month ago, begging her to leave Arthur alone. When Ruby returned, determined to expose him, Dolly snapped. She lured Ruby to Gossington Hall during the storm, using a forged note from G, not Gerald, but a fiction to mask her plan. In the library, Dolly strangled Ruby, her rage fueled by betrayal. The makeup, the sequin dress, the staged body, it was Dolly's cruel flourish making Ruby a spectacle to deflect suspicion. The scarf, scented with Ruby's perfume, was Dolly's, torn in the struggle and left behind. The locket, handed to Bantry by Josie, was meant to incriminate him. A misdirection Dolly orchestrated. But what about Mr. G? Miss Marple reveals Gerald was a red herring, a greedy manager who blackmailed Ruby over her affair but fled when he sensed trouble. Josie, in the dark coat, met Bantry that night to warn him, not knowing Dolly was already in motion. The button, the sedan, the phone number they were distractions, planted or coincidental in a village rife with secrets. Mary's sighting of two figures was Dolly and Bantry arguing after the deed. The glinting object Ruby's earring, later pawned by Dolly to muddy the trail. Let's unpack why this reveal lands so hard. Dolly, the eager sleuth, was the killer. All along, her loyalty to Arthur twisted into a desperate act. It's like discovering your best friend betrayed you. The shock cuts deep because it's personal. Agatha Christie's genius is in making Dolly both sympathetic and monstrous. Her crime born of love and fear. The clues, the scarf, the letter, the makeup fit perfectly. Each a breadcrumb Miss Marple followed to the truth. The village, with its gossip and shadows, hid Dolly's guilt in plain sight, making St. Mary Mead complicit in its silence. Slack, stunned, rests Dolly as she weeps. Arthur's face ashen with guilt. Miss Marple watches quietly, her heart heavy. People kill for what they can't lose. She says softly, her needles clicking again. The library, once a stage for death, is silent now, its secrets laid bare. Drop a comment below. What did you think of Dolly as the killer? Hit that like button and subscribe for more mysteries. This case is closed, but St. Mary Mead's shadows linger. Stay tuned for the next tale.